Welcome to a special edition of the Telltales podcast, Cashflow Pick'em. In this episode, we'll go through pages 1 through 13 of the memo and pick which company we believe will grow their cash flow the most on a percentage basis in 2025. I'm Mike Nicoletti. Every week, along with my co-hosts Jason Wallace and Hunt Lawrence, we bring you the Cashflow memo. Get it at telltales.us. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive deep into energy, technology, and healthcare. So download the memo now and get started.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
Well, let's start with energy first. For us in the Northeast, we're burning lots of feeding oil or lots of natural gas, which is good. One of the advantages of owning heating oil business like Star Group or companies that are in the natural gas business is when it's cold enough to be uncomfortable in the Northeast, you're at least on something that's making money. We also have a new leader to be inaugurated January 20th. He gave a press conference yesterday where he rejected windmills, declared his renewed interest in Greenland, wanted to reacquire the Panama Canal. I would say Exhibit C, oil is behaving quite well. It's up, WTI is up 72 or 73. Demand, despite concerns about China, I think is fine. If you look at the low end in the liquid fuel consumption, it's definitely slowing down. I was looking at just a minute ago, it was up over 2 million barrels in 23 versus 22, maybe a little bit of recovery from COVID, up 1,100,000 barrels total demand in 24 and up only 1 million barrels a day predicted for 25. So would it be better if demand were higher? Yes, but I think we can pretty well count on that 1 million barrels a day of growth, even with China flattening out. But the problem is supply. Here we have the extra supply going from 4.4 to 3, but that depends on Iran being lower, and that depends on renewed sanctions on Iran. It's always possible with Trump and his fellow Wittauer, who he uses as his emissary to the Mideast, that they make the deal with Iran. That would not be good for the price of oil. But if you're in an oil stock, if you're in the OG or Magnolia, one of the other oil stocks, and you're in it, definitely stay in it. But I think if you had something on your watch list and it was oil, I think I'd give it a couple of months. Exhibit B, same thing on gas. If you own it, I wouldn't come out of it. I think if you might get it cheaper in March or April because, again, the demand for for natural gas should be much better in LNG. You look at Exhibit B, the 12.9 going to 14.5 is a big improvement. But the 12.9 was flat with last year, and the improvement depends on just two projects working out. One is Venture's new project in Plaquemines Parish, and the other is expansion at Corpus Christi, the other Cheniere facility. And looking at it, sitting here this afternoon, I actually think 14.5 is a little optimistic. I think the next time I do this, that might be 14 or 13.7 or something like that. We'll see as the year goes out. The only other growth is power. And of course, in power, everyone says AI, data center. But I think it's a practical matter in terms of its impact on natural gas consumption. Natural gas consumption for power was flat as a board through 21 and then started up and has continued to come up around 1.5 Bs a day. Here's an interesting point. From 21, power consumption's gone from 31 to what we're predicting in 25 is 38.5. That's 7 Bs a day of increased production. LNG, which is supposedly the great hope for natural gas, is only gone from 10.7 to 14.5. So power's outperformed it by 2 times. So eventually these LNG plants will get completed, but it sure is taking a while. Exhibit A, as they reelected Michael Johnson as speaker, they've decided to do one big bill, the reconciliation bill, which will include extending the debt ceiling. I don't think they're going to lift it, but I think they'll put it off for 4 years so the Trump administration doesn't have to worry about it. They're going to do border security. They're going to extend the tax cuts. And I think in return for extending the debt ceiling for 4 years, I think they're going to have to take a significant chunk out of the projected spending for 25, which is just a little bit up from 24, at just under 7 trillion. I said when we were making forecasts, I said that one of the forecasts I wanted to be on record of, that by this time next year, the annual run rate for spending would be off by at least $500 billion. I think that's looking more likely, because I think that group of 24 congressmen who just think our spending's too high and they hope to use the debt ceiling as leverage to get spending down, if it's part of this bill, I think they're going to commit themselves to having at least $500 billion less spending. Now, where will it happen? I think $200 billion will come from all other, which, I think that's feasible. I actually think they're going to take something out of the defense budget, just under $1 trillion. Interest they're kind of stuck with. The only other place to get significant savings, I think Social Security is just kind of on autopilot, is Medicare and Medicaid, which is healthcare. That's $1.8 trillion total. I think they're going to have to somehow get $200 billion out of that combined federal program in order to find that $500 billion of savings. So this will be interesting to watch. And I think their schedule for getting that reconciliation bill done is like April. In terms of impact on the equity markets and the capital markets in general, I think it'll be reasonably volatile. Once again, just like with oil and gas, if you have something that you're really interested in owning more of, or you've got a watch list, I really think it's better to sit on your cash for the first couple of months of this year and see if all this sturm and drang, back and forth and whatnot over this big reconciliation bill, with Elon Musk chipping in with his 200 million followers and the president holding lots of press conferences, I think it's going to, on balance, cause stocks to trade somewhat lower. So I think if you really have your heart set on owning a particular security, I don't know, you might go out and buy a part position now, but I think I'd certainly keep half your money back, which would be invested sometime during the first half. With that, this is totally unrehearsed. I thought with Mike and Jason, myself, I thought we turned to page 1. I think I'd like to try to get through all 20 pages if possible by looking at the page. And do we see on page 1 or any of the other pages something that has better prospects for increasing free cash flow? And with that, Mike, I guess first.
Okay, sounds good. So just for clarity, growth in free cash flow doesn't always translate to growth in valuation, but we'll focus on growth in free cash flow because over the long term, that is what drives value. I think page 1, what I like the best is Amazon and their ability to grow free cash flow. That's based on the incredible amount of money that they've been spending over the last couple of years in building out their data centers and the money they've already spent in improving the logistics networks. The caveat is if they continue to increase that capital expenditure, maybe it won't fall down to the bottom line. So Jason, I'll leave it to you. Oh, and then I'll add, I have 2 confirmation picks as well, utilizing Grok and Perplexity, 2 large language models, to see how their results stack up against ours. So you go ahead, Jason, and I'll bring in the AI choices as well.
Yeah, I would lean towards Amazon, but to not make the same pick, I think I'll go with Tesla. The valuation right now, it doesn't really make sense, but I think, as crazy as it sounds, the market's misunderstanding what Elon's been saying about robo-taxis. I think he will release a $30,000 vehicle that you can purchase privately. You can just also place it into the robo-taxi fleet. So in the back half of the year, if they produce these low-cost EVs, I think that's going to be the best-selling vehicle in the country. by the end of the year. So that's my pick.
Correct us if I'm wrong, these things will not have a steering wheel.
That's what he said, but you can't produce it without a steering wheel in today's regulatory environment. So I think there's two different versions. And why can't he put a steering wheel in the car that they previewed? It had a forward-facing seat, two forward-facing seats. It looked like a normal car. It just didn't have the steering wheel in place. So put a steering wheel in it.
What are the AI choices, Mike?
So both Grok and Perplexity were on the same page on this one. They both picked Amazon.
Interesting. Page 2, which is the software companies. Jason, you go first.
So I'm going to pick Oracle here. I think they kind of had a culture shift we saw similar to Microsoft. Even though Ellison's still in charge, it seems from the outside like there's a shift where they're moving to more open architectures, open source software. They've opened their Oracle database up to run on all of the hyperscalers clouds. So I think that was the right move. And then they've really gotten ahead on building out AI infrastructure, and their cloud revenue grew at 24% this past year, which puts them in between Azure and AWS growth. So they're growing as fast as the competition from a smaller base, but picking Oracle.
Yep. And I'll reiterate my pick from last year, Snowflake, mainly because a lot of the artificial intelligence applications are being built on top of the Snowflake as part of the stack. There's a number of other options for databases, but Snowflake is a good option, and it's very easy to get up and going. Grok agreed with me, and Perplexity chose Salesforce.
We're going to keep track of this, see if we have a chance. The language models. Page 3, which is the NVIDIA page. Mike, you go first.
Well, you can probably guess where I picked on this one. I did pick NVIDIA again on a percentage. Remember, we're talking about a percentage growth in free cash flow here. So we're talking off a very large number. I could not cut. My close second would have been Taiwan Semiconductor. And frankly, their monopoly position in the production of leading edge chips has never been better.
Oh, I actually picked TSMC.
Okay.
And you gave my case for it.
Perfect. Both Grok and Perplexity were aligned on NVIDIA. Considering those models run on NVIDIA cards, they might be biased.
You would think. If they have any humanoid characteristics, you'd think they picked NVIDIA. Yeah. How about page 4, Netflix, with Netflix, Walt Disney, Meta, and Spotify?
I chose Spotify, which is probably a surprise for those of you that have listened to us for a long time, because I've probably failed to wrap my head around their business. And my rationale is mainly because they don't actually generate that much cash flow for the amount of revenue that they have. And so there's probably room to generate more. And I think they're going to do it by bringing more content into the platform, which the way they monetize, from what I understand, is based on minutes used. So the more content that comes in that monetizes at a lower rate and potentially that they own, the more cash flow will fall down to their bottom line.
And some people might be listening to us on Spotify.
Yeah, that's probably true. Oh, it is true.
My pick's going to be, I do like Meta. My pick's going to be Netflix. They've demonstrated they have pricing power, and then they're really starting to lean into their advertising model. So I think they're best positioned to grow percentage-wise free cash flow.
They didn't have a Mike Tyson moment on Christmas Day.
Right.
On the Netflix choice, Grok is aligned with you, Jason, and Perplexity chose Meta.
Interesting. Let's do page 5 and 6 together. It's Charter, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile.
I'm glad we're combining these two pages again. I'll pick T-Mobile with this. I don't love the broadband providers. Verizon, I believe they actually lost subscribers this past year. And I just think T-Mobile's the better run of the three.
Yeah, if you remember last year, AT&T grew cash flow the fastest. It was sort of a surprise.
Right.
I also chose T-Mobile. I think they're very well positioned. Grok chose T-Mobile, but Perplexity chose AT&T. So
Interesting. How about the card companies? Page 7.
okay, I'll lead on this one. I actually think we're going to see some changes in the payment space this year, and the big change is that is going to challenge the traditional payment networks, MasterCard and Visa, by using stablecoin-based digital payments networks. So I don't know that PayPal is a great proxy for it, but I'm going to choose PayPal as my pick because of that.
And I'm not a believer of that philosophy, so I'm going to stick with my pick from last year of Visa.
Although we're really spreading the table because Grok chose PayPal and Perplexity chose MasterCard.
Interesting. How about the retailers? Page 8, Walmart, Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, and CarMax.
My pick was CarMax. We underproduced vehicles for a number of years with the supply chain issues during the pandemic. And I think the last I heard, the average vehicle age on the road today is 12 years. So I think a lot of people are going to be pushed into the car market, although interest rates are not helping that fact.
I'm going to go with Home Depot, and at least from my wallet, I'll be spending more money at Home Depot this year. So I'm not going to go think much beyond that. Both Grok and Perplexity chose Walmart.
Interesting. That is very interesting. Walmart seems short of free cash flow, but I suppose it might be a little bit like Amazon. It may be that they'll be able to get their margins up as they do more, as they get more maturing there, and they're being, competing with Amazon.
I 100% agree. When I was doing the research on this page for this, it is really quite miraculous how level the gross margins at Walmart have been through their transition into e-commerce, because e-commerce always is going to have a lower gross margin because you end up spending quite a bit to get the product to the customer. So the fact that they've been able to hold their gross margin steady around 25% has been pretty impressive. So that means that maybe, once they kind of get the right amount of scale in certain areas, they may be able to flex that gross margin upward.
Now we're getting, page 9, we're getting into Hunt's area of expertise, Exxon, Chevron, Conoco, Oxy, Cheniere. But I think we should keep with you guys making choices.
So I picked Occidental. My rationale is the same as last year, and it's if Warren Buffett owns it, I'll own it.
Nice. Well, I chose Cheniere. There's going to be more exports next year. Who knows what pricing and demand will do, but that seems to be the thing. Both Grok and Perplexity chose Exxon.
Interesting. Exxon has a reputation for being the best organized at this point. They have the biggest position in the Permian. They have Guyana, which is the best of the outside U.S. Offshore properties. I would say, based on quality of assets, Exxon has it over Chevron, Conoco, and even Occidental, which has a big Permian position. Cheniere, I do kind of like because they're so good at the LNG business, and there will be more LNG. The next one is the gas processing companies, Kinder Enterprise, Energy Transfer, Western, and ONEOK. I'll be really interested where you guys are on these 5 companies.
So I chose ONEOK, and that was based on they've got some a merger that's going to go through, and I think that will drive some additional cash flow. But again, probably more interested to hear Hunt's perspective. But Jason, why don't you give yours?
So Mike and I often say that inaction is often the best choice. And I picked Enterprise last year, so I'll stick with it.
Nice. Both Grok and Perplexity chose OneOak, surprisingly. I almost thought it would be too new or small that it would show up, but both of those do pull current news sources. So.
No, Mike is right about the M&A additional cash flow. I think Enterprise will do very well this year. I think they're all pretty well positioned, but because of the M&A, there's no question that OneOak will have more increase in free cash flow, I think. So I'm pretty impressed with the AI models figuring that out. Page 11, the oil companies, EOG, Magnolia, Permian, and Diamondback.
So when we recap these, Permian did the best. They're doing something right, so I'm taking them.
Nice. I chose EOG, and so did Grok and Perplexity.
Yeah. Permian did it last year with M&A. You got a lot of M&A impact with Permian and with Diamondback. EOG never acquires anything, but they seem to be the best run. And the best run or the best results of spending half of the cash flow and having significant production growth is EOG on multi-basin companies and then Magnolia. Both very good performance. Page 12 is the gas companies, Antero, EQT, Expand, which is the old Chesapeake. And we put Antero Midstream here just to have a contrast. One company, Antero owns a third of it. So one company, really one business, and how midstream gets valued and other financial characteristics as compared to the upstream company. But what are your picks here?
So I went with Expand. And let's see, I don't have my notes in front of me on Expand, so I assume it was an M&A related thing. And then Grok went with EQT, and Perplexity also chose Expand.
Yeah. Both Expand and EQT will have a lot of M&A. So one of those two, I think, will win.
So now that you have the intel, Jason, what are you going to take?
All right, yeah. Jason, you have.
Well, should I switch? I wrote Antero, and then I did not. You might have talked me out of it, Hunt. So if I can switch, I'll pick EQT.
You got a final choice. You don't have to stick with Antero. If I were you, I would pick Expand or EQT. Both have lots of incremental free cash flow from M&A. The banks, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Interactive Brokers. We're talking about percentage increase, so I haven't got the pick yet, and I don't want to have too much influence on Mike and Jason, but in terms of percentage increase in cash flow, I think I'd take Interactive.
Yeah, Interactive is what I chose as well. I felt like Goldman was a close second because a lot of deal-making activity could really drive their M&A group. It could drive all the big banks, but there's a lot of other things that could happen that may negatively affect all of them together. So I chose Interactive.
Yep. We're all aligned on this one.
Okay. Except the AIs are totally on a different page. They chose, Grok chose Goldman Sachs and Perplexity chose JP Morgan.
Oh, interesting. Let's quit here. We're never going to finish the 20 pages despite our good intentions. We'll have to pick it up next week.
Okay. Let's take a quick break for a message from Oak Cliff Sailing.
Hi, I'm Dawn Riley. I'm currently at Oak Cliff Sailing in Oyster Bay, New York, but I and my friends are coming on the road to areas around the country, including Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, San Francisco, San Diego, Hampton Roads, Virginia, Annapolis, and any place else that wants to have us stop in. What is this tour? It's collaboration, which means every single club, every single parent, every single athlete is invited and encouraged to show up. Oak Cliff is providing the facilitation and the record keeping. So the collaboration comes from your thoughts, our thoughts, things that we've learned in previous events, and things that we will take forward. And everybody who participates and signs up will get the collective knowledge that athletes want to go sailing. They know that they have great potential, but they don't always have the tools and the information to figure out how to make a plan. So it's basically a self-help organization session for these sailors, from a high schooler who wants to get to college, a sailor who's a teenager that wants to go to the Olympics, a semi-retired person who maybe wants to do the Vendée Globe, and we will help them get the tools and make the map for them to move forward. There's already some things in place on our website called the Olympic Helix, so people can look at that. I'll just have a copy here. Look at that in advance, but that will be one step of it. It's not just for the Olympic athletes, even though that's probably the one that gets the most attention and is also struggling the most because, let's face it, we haven't been that organized in the Olympic pathways for quite a while. If you're a young sailor, often your funding source is your parents. But what happens when you're out on your own? How can you do a campaign for the Olympics and still hold down a job? How can you go to school and still make professional sailing or an Olympic campaign a goal? What are the tools? That's what we will be talking about with the funders, and they can help to coach their younger sailors. But it's also an opportunity to talk to people who are out there getting sponsorship, or sponsors or foundations. How do you organize a foundation for your club? What are the basic rules and resources that you can sort out to make sure that you raise money and you stay within the law? This is anybody from race committee to club managers to optee parents to people that want to host an event, or people that are in charge of making sure that all of the bits and pieces go together. So it's simple things like, do we provide box lunches? Do we have make your own? Or do we have them bring their own? Our club is great at match racing, but we don't want to have team racing. So we will never do any team racing because in Oyster Bay, Sewanaka does that. In terms of junior sailing, Oak Cliff doesn't do any junior sailing because that is the Waterfront Center, which is a community sailing program, or a couple of clubs around that have the junior sailing programs. So how do we collaborate together as organizers to structure our lake, our sound, our bay, our area, so that we are all working together, not stepping on toes? And it's shocking how many times we'll sit in a room with a bunch of smart people and somebody will say, well, we struggle with such and such. And somebody else says, we love doing that. And you've just got a match made in heaven. So again, celebration, collaboration, open to everybody. Oak Cliff is the facilitator. We're coming in to bring a little bit of the fun. And then we are also the record keepers. So we are collecting the information, and we have hundreds of different ideas and things that we're learning as we go along the road, and we will then share those back to the different regions. We really, really, really want this to be region-wide, neutral. We are Switzerland. We are not trying to take over. We are not trying to tell anybody what to do. We're just trying to share the smart things that everybody else in the country already is doing, but maybe their neighbors don't know. I hope to see you soon. Oh my God, I forgot about the celebration part. In each area, we're hoping to have a party either before or after. And so far, it turns out that in Detroit, it's a halfway to Mackinac party. In Chicago, it's the Pink Pony party. So I don't think Oak Cliff has to help you guys in partying and celebrating, but it's an idea that we all get together. We're super psyched, energized, and ready to take over 2025. See you soon.
And now back to the show.
We haven't, in covering all these companies, we haven't covered any healthcare news, Jason, on Atlantis or Vertex or Arrow or any of the other companies we own or have on a watch list.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would bring up about Vertex in the study where they did not show superiority to the placebo, that was in it's a nerve pain study, and that's their whole. They've kind of split their studies into two, whether it's acute injury pain or nerve pain. So this study does not affect any of the acute pain data they've collected and already submitted to the FDA for review. So I expect approval on acute pain in my opinion, based on the data they've collected. This is a setback on the nerve pain side, but acute pain is a huge market. I think a lot of the commentary was a little overblown that said this drug does not work. It's clearly shown it works in many cases, just not for sciatica pain, which is what this study was. And frankly, I don't think any company has had much success in producing a treatment for that.
Good. Anything new on Lantheus?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything there, but a lot of companies hold back a lot of announcements for this coming week at the JP Morgan conference. So we should get a lot more updates from a lot of companies in the coming week.
And all the stuff affecting Lilly which just seems to be a lot of, it's the right word, competing press releases on weight loss medicines.
Yeah, there's a fight over how much of the compounding pharmacy should be allowed to produce the same drug. Lilly, from the outside, you say, as much as these are needed, it's not really in shortage. They're able to fill the prescriptions at this point, I believe, and they have a patent on it. So if you're going to, I'm hard pressed to say that you should be able to circumvent the patent protection that these companies have. It really disincentivizes them to pour the money required to get through all the FDA, the regulatory pathway to produce these drugs.
Yeah, I think that gets cleared up pretty quick in the new administration.
Right. Agreed.
Anything more on what RFK Jr. means to help investments in general?
One thing that he said was one of his goals that I don't see many people talking about, that I do think is important, is he wants to release de-identified health data. And that could have a lot of benefits because people could find new ways to find fraud and waste in the system, new unintuitive ways, that people are being treated, some correlations that maybe haven't been studied. We don't know all the positive effects that it could have, but I don't think there's downside into releasing this data and then letting AI or a broad range of data scientists kind of dig through it and see what can be improved.
Yeah, you got to imagine that bug was put in his ear from the Vance, kind of the tech side of the new administration, because, Jason and I have built a startup in the healthcare space, and it's very difficult to get access to data, partly because of HIPAA laws and whatnot. The long story short is there's plenty of opportunity if you had all the information in one place, but right now it's siloed in 3 different areas. So
yeah, when it made sense before, when it was all paper records, it was really difficult to de-identify and disaggregate this data. But now that it's digital, you can do that quickly at scale.
Yeah, and that could really significantly improve care in a lot of different ways. So.
Right. What do you think, while we have just a couple minutes left, what do you think about the possibility, if the goal is to save $500 billion, to save 30 or 40% of that, say 200 billion out of the $500 billion from the combination of Medicare and Medicaid programs? I think that's realistic or unrealistic or a brief bar, or how would you characterize that?
That's hard to characterize.
Yeah.
Well, in one sense, like, you can reduce costs by reducing supply, right? You can reduce costs by reducing waste and fraud and abuse. And so I think the preference will be to go over waste, fraud, and abuse before you go after reducing supply. There are probably some cases for reducing supply and taking a more practical approach to deciding who gets what treatments. And I think if you have a government-run healthcare system, you ought to have that in order to not make unreasonable investments in healthcare. So none of these things are really popular to talk about, but for now, waste, fraud, and abuse are probably a pretty good chunk. There's a lot of administrative costs. I don't know how you really cut the administrative costs out, but I feel like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to go through first.
Right. As expenses have gone up, in particular in hospitals, they haven't hired, you hear about nursing shortages and physician shortages. They haven't hired more practitioners. A lot of the growth and expense at these organizations is in the administrative side.
Good. Well, we'll get into that some more next week. I think that's a very interesting topic. And, you know, the two-man team, it's Elon and Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy comes out on healthcare business. If there's someone who should be able to identify ways to be more efficient in healthcare, you know, he has the credentials to do that. So I think we'll spend some time towards the end of our call next Wednesday on that subject. In the meantime, everyone be well and stay healthy. And remember, there is an upside to cold weather. If you own fossil fuel stock, there is a blue sky here. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
The views expressed on this podcast are the hosts alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the hosts nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future, and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.